Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it anywhere and everywhere. You can even earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works.
Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today.
Then you can go ahead and distribute your podcast to Spotify and anywhere else podcasts are heard.
Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take the conversation with your fans to the next level, Q&A polls are the best way to get them talking.
With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions.
And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. We've been using Spotify for Podcasters, and we highly recommend you give it a try. Download Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters and get started.
Welcome back to That's So Fringy podcast. I'm Rick.
Kristen.
And I'm Bethany.
And we are here doing another episode for you guys, just the three of us, and we're excited.
Just the three of us.
Yeah, get it, girl.
Sorry.
And we wanted to talk about the debacle, the things that are going on in Hawaii right now. There's a lot of that on the news. We know, we've seen it, and we just wanted to start, obviously, before we get into any, false flag talk or conspiracy talk or anything like that. We want to first start with acknowledging the fact that according to the news reports and according to the things that we've seen, there have been losses of life. There have been lots of people that have disappeared. They can't find them. And so we want to be sensitive to that. Obviously, we know that even if we believe that it's a false flag, that doesn't necessarily mean that nothing happened. We're not saying that. We're not saying that people didn't die. So we want to be respectful first and foremost. We want, we would ask that people would be praying for them, figuring out how they could help and all those things. But just make sure that if you are helping and you are sending money or trying to participate in helping them, that you wouldn't send it to certain places that we know have a history of basically laundering money from the cabal. As an example, the Red Cross. We wanted to be very clear that the Red Cross is a very negative organization. They like to launder money through the Red Cross. In fact, in Haiti, when the earthquake happened in 2010, there was a lot of destruction and a lot of stuff like that. People gave a lot of money for the people in Haiti. There was a big "We Are the World," that thing. And
Love that song.
I know you do. That's why I brought it up. But that fundraising was all headed up by Big Mike, by Michelle Obama. And so basically what happened with that money is 25% of it went to administrative costs, which is a fourth of all of that money. And they built like 6 houses, I think it was, for the Haitian people. And then nobody really knows what happened with all of the other money because they refused to give up the records. So just something to think about, that just because the Red Cross is saying send money and Obama's on Twitter saying, we all need to come together and we need to help the people of Lahaina and we need to give. That's true. We do. But we also need to be good stewards of our money, and we need to pay attention to who is then managing that money and is it getting to the people that actually need it. And we would recommend, take it or leave it, that you not give it to the Red Cross. So that's my little spiel. You guys want to get into this?
That was a long breath.
Yeah, it happens. So what do you guys have on Hawaii? Let's get into this because everybody's talking about it, right? There's so much going on. There's so many different angles that people are looking at. What are some of the things that you guys have found?
Well, we should probably just start at the beginning. So a bunch of fires broke out on August 8th through around the 11th, I think they burned. As far as causes of the fire, I haven't heard anything definitive. I know they've said electrical. There was a a tropical storm or whatever nearby. So there was, a lot of wind. And I guess the wind was coming from the east, which is really unusual for that part of the island. And it was just a lot of strange occurrences.
Wasn't there a hurricane going on at the time?
Right.
I've read there was a hurricane, which adds to the wind. Obviously, if you know how fire works, it needs oxygen to survive. And when you add a lot of oxygen really quickly, it spreads the fire. It also pushes the fire along the tree lines and everything like that.
Which is weird. So hang with me for a second. So okay. A few years ago, we had a bunch of fires near us because we live in the Pacific Northwest. There's mountains and trees everywhere.
Yeah.
So we had these fires up the Mackenzie Highway, which is, an hour or so from here. So not too far. And that was weird because it was a really strong east wind that came in. And it was the same thing where they blamed it on the electrical power grid because the electric company didn't turn off the power to that area soon enough.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, that's almost exactly what they're saying happened there. Strong east wind. The power company didn't shut off the power in time. So this seems like Groundhog's Day a little bit to me.
Yeah. It's incredibly weird because you have, fires going on all over the country right now. It's not just Maui. You've got fires going on everywhere. I mean, at the same time, there's these fires going on in Canada. These Canadian fires, they're having to evacuate these capital cities up in the north because there's just wildfires everywhere. There's wildfires again over here by us. There. If you look at a wildfire map on the internet, you could see the whole country is littered with wildfires right now.
But it's America and Canada. Like there's not a lot of fires anywhere else for the most part, besides isolated, which seems weird.
Yeah, so you have to get into how are all these fires being started? Because it can't all be electrical. I mean, we obviously know that there's electrical fires that happen, but there's also very stringent electrical codes that people follow and stuff like that. And so it's pretty far between, there's not a lot of that happens. Although, if I was going to be the devil's advocate and argue, I would say that, yes, obviously, these electrical fires happen and they've lost large quantities of buildings and things like that. But these are very suspicious because they're kind of coming out of nowhere. And fire.
What are other reasons that you get wildfires? So you've got lightning. You've got humans, basically. There was a huge one up the gorge by us 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. There was a guy that dropped a firecracker off the edge of a hiking trail and caught the Columbia Gorge on fire. What are other reasons for wildfire starting?
I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, it's either humans or it's, there. I know that if you're doing lumber and timber and stuff like that, or you're driving a car through the forest and your engine's really hot and the grass is really hot, stuff like that, you could start it like that. Machinery. I know that sometimes forests will catch on fire because as they're cutting down the trees, the chainsaws will get really hot and the friction will cause sparks and it will cause fire. But I mean, these Maui wildfires, the fire isn't acting like fire usually works. Anybody that understands fire science and how fires work, they'll tell you that this doesn't make any sense. You've got cars that weren't touched. You've got trees that apparently are still standing. And that's how it was over here, too. It was actually a very perplexing fire to people that understood, like the firefighters and everybody like that understand how fire works. They deal with it every day. They know how it moves as a living organism, because it does. Everybody's seen Backdraft. We know how a fire sucks oxygen and it does all of these different things. And these fires are taking out certain areas, but they're not taking out other areas. Like as an example, along the coast where like all the really rich people live. Not touched. Like, it's interesting to me because you had the guy that was in charge of sounding the alarms in Maui, the emergency broadcaster type guy that's supposed to be sending out the alarms. He's basically the watchman on the wall to let everybody know that there's this. Well, he decided that it wasn't a big deal, so he didn't send the alarm. And as we know, people had literally no
let's
warning.
List off some of the other like weird happenings of that. So the way that the fire started is a little weird.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that there was no emergency broadcast, there was no. I mean, when I lived in Texas, if there was even a tornado, I don't even know how many miles it was, but a tornado that's within 30 miles, they sound the horns or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And a tornado only touches down for like a mile. So like, it's not going to get that close to you, but they still sound the alarm. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. Like, so there was no alarm. There was no emergency broadcast, nothing like that. I mean, we got an emergency broadcast at almost midnight last week or whatever, scared the crap out of all of us because we were laying down in bed watching TV, and all of a sudden it's like, wah, wah. Our phones are all going off in the house. And what was it even for? It was like
it was for these fires,
the fire evacuations that are 40, 50 miles away from us.
Yeah,
but because we're all in the same
3.
county.
Yeah, level 3 evacuations for them. Right. And so because we're in the same county, even though it's further out,
so we got a level 3 evacuation notice, and we're 40 miles away. These people got nothing. They got nothing on their iPhones. I mean, it's like, it's flabbergasting to me. Like, who answers for that? Who says, we forgot to push the button? I don't know. Like, it just
he's resigned from his position. So not sure how that's, where the accountability is going to be or anything like that. But that certain individual has resigned from his position as far as I know.
Convenient.
Yeah. So some people are saying on the internet that it might have been a direct energy weapon that started this. And obviously we know that there's technologies out there that the government has that we don't know anything about, like flying saucers and big mothership, all this different stuff that's coming out in Congress right now, that they're telling Congress that this stuff, it actually exists. It's Skunkworks and Lockheed Martin and all of these people that are doing that. And they're also saying that we've had these direct energy weapons for a while, and there's lots of different types of direct energy weapons. And we're by no means saying that that's what happened here. We're not saying that it was a direct energy weapon. We're just saying that there's a lot of pictures on the internet that cannot be verified or corroborated, but there's a lot of people that are saying it. So we want
to say eyewitness accounts that they saw these beams or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And now that more stories of the locals are coming out, there's more and more accounts of these people saying, no, we saw this thing. Like, it was not, it was weird. And they couldn't really describe it very well. But
yeah, it's almost like a lightning strike from the sky, but it's, how lightning comes down like a spider web, it comes through in all different directions, and there's no like uniformity to it. It's just a release of energy. You've seen Independence Day. It's what they did to the White House. Exactly. It's like the same thing. It's just a direct shot down. It's like lightning, but a straight line. And there's lots of different types, as I said before. There's like a crowd dispersal one. Chris and I were talking about this earlier today. It basically sends out an energy wave at a human body, and it makes it very uncomfortable for them to even be in the presence of that.
For people that don't think these direct energy weapons are a thing, there's a Wikipedia page, and it's on there that they are a thing. So like, head in the sand does not work on this, because they're saying that they've already made them. They're called DEWs, direct energy weapons, and they have multiple different types. But this is the interesting one to me, was the microwave type, which it says some devices are described as microwave weapons. The microwave range is commonly defined as being between 300 megahertz and 300 gigahertz, which is within radio frequency range. Some examples of the weapons which have been publicized by the military are as follows. So then they go on and say, this is a millimeter wave source that heats the water in a human target's skin and thus causes incapacitating pain. It was developed by the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory for like a riot control.
Air Force. Oh my gosh, weird.
Weird. And then it says, though intended to cause severe pain while leaving no lasting damage, concern has been voiced as to whether the system could cause irreversible damage to the eyes. So this is another one of those things where it's like, we don't really know what the long-term damage is. But short-term, it works really good because it causes people to have so much pain that they don't know what to do with themselves. It literally boils the water in your skin.
In your cells. It's crazy.
This sounds awful.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, they're thinking of ways to keep control over the masses, because if the masses get out of control, they don't have what they need to be able to keep us under their thumb. Mm-hmm. And so if they have these type of weapons and they're hiding them, it's probably not, they're not hiding them because they don't want us to know about them. They're hiding them because they want to use them on us and us not know about it because of that. That makes more sense if you think about it that way. They're trying to hide it from you because they're using it on you, or they're making fires. They're setting up 5G towers. Like, what do you think 5G is? A lot of people are talking about this 5G experimentation that the government was trying to do and everything like that. It's, that's what 5G is. These microwaves in the air all the time that connect our Wi-Fi, that connect our cell phones, all of those different, we don't see those radio waves, but they're constantly all around us all the time. There's energy in the ether, in the air, all around us. And just because we don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right? It's just like the wind, kind of.
Well, and if you've ever seen a ghost hunter show, that's what they're using, an EMF meter and all kinds of stuff, and it's all just radio waves. I mean, that's what they literally have a static box that they turn on that sounds like radio static. And then they're able to pick up things on the back end that sound like words. Yeah. Yeah.
Demon words. Yeah. So there's lots of stuff we can go into. I've got a couple of notes here. I thought it was interesting that there was a lot of celebrities that have houses on Maui. Mm-hmm. Like Oprah and Willie Nelson and the guy
Lady Gaga.
Yeah, Lady Gaga. Yeah. I mean, the list is long. You can find it on the internet. Maybe we'll post it in the show notes page on the internet or on the website for you. But it's weird that all of these houses, all these celebrities have houses. Obviously, it's a beautiful place. And you could say, well, it's really just kind of like a vacation spot for all these people. Who wouldn't want a house on the beach, blah, blah, blah. But there's also speculation that Hawaii, I guess it's not even speculation, it's been proven that Hawaii is a hub for human trafficking, a huge hub for human trafficking. As an example,
I think Oprah Winfrey lives there like most of the time now.
Yeah.
It's not a vacation home for her. She's there more than not.
Yeah. Arizona State University News did an article. You can find it on their website, and it's talking about, is sex buying or sex trafficking part of the Hawaiian culture? And if you read this article, you'll go through and you'll find that it is a huge part of Hawaii's culture and how they take women and children all the time. Like, people go missing in Hawaii all the time and nobody's really talking about it. And so if we start to, go back and open up our view a little bit and we say, okay, what's the big picture here? Well, we talk a lot about sex trafficking, human trafficking, organ harvesting, all of that different stuff. Is it possible? I'm not saying that it's true, but is it possible that Maui is a huge human trafficking port? If BlackRock and Vanguard and Alexan Baldwin, who own all of the railway systems and all the port systems, if they have control of all of that, would it be possible for them to transport humans on the railroad tracks onto which, we heard about all the train derailments, all those different things. We talked about how could it possibly be that they're rescuing children during these train derailments? We don't know, but we know that there's a large human trafficking cleanup going on behind the scenes right now. And so is it possible that this was part of a cleanup exercise? And we don't know. there's just all of this information that we have to put into account. And so with this article from ASU and lots of others that are saying that, human trafficking is a huge thing in Hawaii, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that human trafficking could have been involved at all in Maui?
Mm-hmm.
Why would they want to destroy Maui? I mean, could it have been a cover-up for what they were doing? If a cop knocks on my door and I'm a drug dealer, what am I going to do? I'm going to flush all the evidence, right? And is that what they're doing here? They're knowing that they're coming for them. I've heard that there's 6 different underground tunnels in Maui. Is it possible? Is it possible that it was a human trafficking cleanup operation? Or is it possible that they're getting rid of the evidence? We don't know. Mm-hmm. Just all interesting thoughts, because you get really stuck on the narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that area, that Main Street area that was all burned up is prime real estate. And the government was saying that first of all, the insurance companies are not paying out these families that lost their homes, which is really weird. Mm-hmm. Which also happened here locally.
Mm-hmm. There's some loophole in your homeowner's policy where it didn't cover a lot of what these people had taken from them,
which is ridiculous. But I know I've read a lot that that's like prime real estate, especially for these celebrities, high up people that they want that area for some reason. Mm-hmm. Is it because there's so much trafficking going on? Is it easier to traffic?
Is it more accessible to traffic people there? And wasn't there something about they had proposed basically to turn Maui into one of the first of those 15-minute cities that you guys have probably heard people talk about, where if they've got everything that you need within 15 minutes around you, then you don't need to own a car because you don't need to drive anywhere. So you basically rent your house and then you own nothing. You don't get to own anything. And so they had proposed something like that for Maui that got turned down a couple of weeks ago, where they were like, no, we don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a socialist utopia. You get an allowance from the government. You get to live there. You get to do everything. Everything's close by. You just trust us. We're the government. We're here to help. That type of thing. And you find yourself in a socialistic environment really quickly. And how much power and control do you have over your own life? Any autonomy over your own individualism.
This little meme on here that said it's called a smart city. And then below that it says, because if they called it a concentration camp, you might not want to live there.
Yeah. It's true. And they've got those. I mean, they've had those in Ukraine for years. They have them in Russia. They call them secret cities. These secret cities are these cities. It's almost like the Hunger Games, where they have a certain thing that community does. They put all those people in that community, and those are the ones that do that. Just like the Hunger Games.
You know what what this reminds me of, though, is this 15-minute city idea is like Chernobyl. Mm-hmm. Do you remember how they basically had the nuclear plant and then they built a whole town right around it? Everybody worked there, and then they lived in these they look like the projects.
Yep.
But they didn't have to drive anywhere. They didn't have to. They had buses that came around and picked up all the guys, took them to work every day. It seems terrible.
Seems super socialist and Marxist, and we know that the Soviet Union was like that. I mean, Stalin was a Marxist. It's not a weird thing, but it's not Hawaii, because Hawaii is America.
Right.
And that's another thing that I found as I was digging is how did America even get Hawaii? Has anybody ever asked that question or really thought about how America even has Hawaii, this place out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that belonged to all of the indigenous people, the Hawaiian natives that live there? How did they even get it? Because they had their own kingdom back in the day. So I came across this this video that outlines the whole thing, how there was a king, they had their own autonomous sovereign republic, and they had everything that they needed. They didn't want, any outsiders. They were seafarers. They had it all. They were very spiritual, in tune with nature, trees and mountains. I mean, if you think about, the Avatar, and how these people were indigenous to there, and you had all of the governmental people that want to come in and take all the resources, right? This is Hawaii. This is what they did to Hawaii. They came in, they wanted the resources, they wanted the land, they wanted to set up military there, like they have. They set up Pearl Harbor and all that, and they came in and they basically, all of these business white men came in and stole Hawaii from the Hawaiian people, and they ended up locking up the queen. That the king had died, the queen had taken over, and then she ended up dying, being put into like prison and being held captive as these people just came in and took over Hawaii. And she wrote letters and things, talking like poems, almost like love songs to the Hawaiian people, saying that this is never how it was supposed to be. One day we will be free, all of those different things. And it's just terrible, because you look back and you're like, man, the Americans stole this indigenous nation from them just because we wanted the land and we wanted military power in the ocean right there where we could respond quickly, and we could, it's just like, we did that with the Indians. We did it with the native Hawaiians. It's like, when are we going to get to the point where we stop just going in and taking people's stuff because we want it? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. I'll have to post that video on the website, because it's pretty eye-opening to see. And I never even thought to ask the question, I don't know why, but I never thought to ask the question, how did America get Hawaii? What did that even look like? So if you guys go on the website, you can watch that video. I'll link it there so that you guys can check that out. So what else do we have with Hawaii? Lots of weird stuff. The Obamas.
Well, this was another. So as I was researching CIA projects, because, we've done a lot of stuff on that, they have a whole page about human radiation experiments. So these are experiments that have been proven to have taken place in the United States. I mean, they have them for all over the world, but we're going to focus on the United States because that's where we live.
Sure.
So they're basically proven that these experiments have happened or are happening. And this was all these are just radiation experiments. So this is from the United States Department of Defense, United States Atomic Energy Commission, and the United States Public Health Services. Okay. So those were the groups that were involved and funded all of this. So the experiments included directly injecting plutonium and other radioactive elements to mostly terminally ill patients without their consent, feeding radioactive traces to children, enlisting doctors to administer radioactive iron to impoverished pregnant women, exposing U.S. soldiers and prisoners to high levels of radiation, irradiating the testicles of prisoners, which caused severe birth defects, and exhuming bodies from graveyards to test them for radiation without the consent of the families of the deceased. So all of this stuff got declassified at the same time. Remember in 1994 when all the MK Ultra stuff came out, because President Clinton is stupid and got all this stuff declassified. So this was another set of documents that came out from there.
Yeah.
And those are just the known and proven and documented. And they're also vague that, who hasn't been to a hospital? This could have been anybody, really, between the armed forces, the hospitals, impoverished. So they were basically telling these impoverished women that, here, we'll give you these iron supplements. Take these, it'll help the baby. And they had radiation in them. Who's to say? Same thing we've said a million times. They're not doing it anymore, I'm sure. Right.
Yeah, when people fully wrap their mind around the depopulation agenda, it's pretty gross. The things that they've been doing for a long time to figure out how to how to kill us all, but make it look like it's not them. You know what I mean? Like, how do we make it look like it was an accident, or how do we make it look like it was the food that they were eating or the medicine they were taking, or, it's just COVID. It's not my fault. But now they're finding out that there were biolabs in Ukraine, and it was, COVID did originate from Ukraine, and the Russians that are over there are saying there are American biolabs in Ukraine that have been making biological weapons to kill people, and that is where COVID came from. And did it come from China? Yeah, it also came from China, because if you think about it, if you're trying to start a war between China and America, you would disperse it from China. Right.
So if I'm a Ukrainian and I'm like, hey, I want to get these people fighting with each other, I'm going to fly to China and start it there. Like, that makes the most sense.
Yeah, but it's coming out now that it was actually manufactured, tested, studied in Ukraine. And Obama went over there and helped set up those labs. I mean, Obama, when I say that Obama is evil, like, people have no idea. There are pictures of him on a boat with George Clooney and a little Asian girl. And then there's another picture of that same girl all bound up, tied up, bruised up, and malnourished. And you're like, why is Obama with that same little girl and George Clooney on a boat going to a private house in Hawaii? Like, let's stop focusing.
Just a coincidence, Rick.
Yeah. Let's stop focusing on the things that are going on the news, because we know this is a misinformation war that we're in, right? So if we're on the internet trying to find all the truth, we know for a fact that the bad guys are also on the internet trying to distract us from all of the truth. And so it's like, there is a rabbit hole that will find you the truth, but there's also 37 other rabbit holes, and you got to figure out which one's right, and you're playing this game of getting all of or at least we should be getting all of the information, and then whittling it down and saying, okay, this doesn't fit with the big narrative that we've created, or not created, but we've figured out up until this point, because we figured out the CIA is trying to kill people, that there are bad guys in the government, that there's child pornography, child molesters. They're trying to make that right now like a new thing. Like, you can be a minor attracted person. They've even made an acronym for it, MAP. And they're trying to help us understand that that's okay, because that's where they want us to go, is to believe that what they're doing to our children is okay. And that's why they're allowing all of the stuff that they're allowing, because that's the end goal. Depopulation. They get to be in charge. They get to kill our children. They get to molest our children, and we'll kill our own children with abortion. They've convinced us to kill ourselves just due to the inconvenience of having a child. And I know there's, exceptions to the rule. Anytime you talk about abortion, everybody gets all bent out of shape. I know there's exception to the rule. The first thing everybody says is, what about rape? Am I going to have a baby because I was raped? It's like, well, one crime doesn't amount to another crime, right? You got raped, but that doesn't mean you now have to kill somebody. It just doesn't work like that. Like, I understand there's trauma, and I'm not trying to be insensitive to that trauma, but the reality of the situation is you're going from a rape to a murder, and now it's you that's murdering. So are you really getting yourself out of the trauma, or are you creating more trauma for yourself? Because now you've been raped and you've killed a baby. That psychologically messes with every woman's mind. Whether they admit it or not, it does. And so we have to have these conversations. We have to say, yes, there are exceptions to the rule, but when you say that a baby's heartbeat doesn't even beat for a certain amount of time because that's what you read on the internet somewhere, like, no. What's the real research? What's the real thing? Look it up yourself. When does a baby's heart really start beating? When does conception really start? These are all the questions that we should be asking. Like Hawaii. I didn't know why. We need to, all of these questions that we haven't even been asking because we've been so distracted, we need to start asking questions about everything, literally everything.
Yeah. So explain a little bit more of how these direct energy weapons work. And we're not saying that that's what caused these fires. Because, I mean, I've seen some, like cell phone footage where it looks like a laser beam that came down, but AI can do whatever it wants with pictures. So I don't even believe any pictures that I see anymore. So, but it's a possibility. So explain to me how they work.
Yeah, that's the hard thing, because nowadays in the world we live in, you can do anything with video and picture that you want to. It's really hard to determine what's true and what's not true. But what you can do is figure out that these direct energy weapons actually exist, and you can read the actual manuals. And these people that are coming out and discussing these things in Congress, these are people, they're not just regular guys. These are people that have worked, as an example, one gentleman worked in Antarctica, at the base in Antarctica, and knows for a fact that they have direct energy weapons. He knows for a fact that in Antarctica, he's testifying in front of Congress, that is their air traffic control, one of their air traffic control locations for all of their UFOs. Because if you think about it, if you've got a bunch of planes in the air, we know where all of them are, right? We know where all those planes are because we don't want them to crash into each other. Well, the same is true for UFOs. They don't want to crash their UFOs that they've spent millions and billions of dollars on. So they have to have some kind of a stealth type of UFO tracking system, right? And so that same system, that same device, this gentleman says, also can do direct energy weapon type stuff. It's a technology that's like quantum and way outside of the realm of anything we've ever been allowed to really study or know about. They don't teach it in school, but quantum physics is a real thing. And if people begin to understand how quantum physics work, they understand how a direct energy weapon could work, because you could take that direct energy weapon and you can send it to anywhere in the world from that location in Antarctica, and it will look like they can change the weather. They can do earthquakes. He even admits that they caused the earthquake in, where was it? New Zealand, that Christchurch, New Zealand earthquake that they had. He says, and it's his word against everybody else's, but he's a whistleblower that's talking in front of Congress under oath, and he says that they caused that, and he knows that they caused that, and it was an accident.
They being DARPA or who?
The military-industrial complex. Okay. Because when you talk about who is doing it in the government, there's the deep, dark, black stuff, which is mostly, cabal initiated stuff. You have a little bit of Air Force working with them because they're on Air Force bases. A lot of these deep underground military bases that we talk about are underground at all of these different Air Force bases around the world. It's basically where you would go into a building that looks like nothing, like an admin building or something like that, and there's an elevator that takes you down deep into a deep underground military base. And if you've ever watched Resident Evil, I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, but it has this schematic of this deep underground base where they're zooming out, and it's showing you how it goes down into the ground, and it has all of the different rooms and all of the different tunnels.
Is it called the Hive or something like that?
Yeah, the Hive. Yeah, so they show you kind of what they have on deep underground, and they have whole cities down there. These people can go down there and work on UFOs. They can work on direct energy weapons. They can do all that technology, and then they could come up, scan their badge out, and go home and act like nothing happened because they're on an NDA. They can't say anything to their wife. They can't say anything to their kids. But that doesn't mean that this stuff doesn't exist. And so these direct energy weapons that we're talking about, it would be basically like a laser beam coming out, and it's basically taking the energy that's in the ether, the free energy that's all around us, and then it's organizing it and turning it into a direct shot. They figured out
So
how to do
does
that.
it come from like a satellite? Does it come from a ground location, or does it matter?
It just comes from the ether. They have what they call rods of God, which is basically where they can drop something from a really high altitude. It's like dropping picture having a really long metal rod and then dropping it from really high at a certain spot. And that's going to basically destroy anything in its wake. And that's kind of one way that they do things.
Speaking of, so was it the mayor of this town that said that it looked like a bomb had gone off down there in Maui? I'm pretty sure it was the mayor, and he said it looked like a bomb and fire had gone off. It didn't look like just a wildfire.
Yeah,
and this stuff was burnt so much, like it was burnt at such a high heat that it was like they're like that. So another thing that's weird is they have said that there was 80 something people that have died. Like I don't know what the official number is now, but it's less than 100.
Over 100 now.
Is it so? But these people are saying there are thousands of people that are missing. They don't have to call them dead yet. They can just call them missing, but thousands of people that are missing. And the speculation is this stuff is so hot and so concentrated that these bodies will never be recovered because they've turned to ash.
Vaporized.
There is nothing left of these bodies. If you look at the drone footage of these homes, there's nothing left of these homes, which is super weird because even like we've had huge wildfires around here and there's still like a burnt carcass left.
Yeah.
Something.
For lack of a better term. There's nothing left of these homes. They're like, I don't know. And it was enough to like melt steel beams, which is another weird thing. It's kind of like the same thing as 9/11 where jet fuel doesn't melt steel beams. Same idea. That a wildfire wouldn't melt these steel beams like that.
Right. Yeah, it definitely looks like. Go ahead.
Oh, another couple weird things. So I had heard that they had already started school. They start, I think, earlier than we start here. But for whatever reason, that school had let out early that day. So there was like a ton of kids home by themselves because their parents are still working. And none of those kids have been recovered yet. Like they vaporized. Really, really strange. Also, the chief of police in Maui was also the point guy in the Vegas shooting in 2018. Like, how weird is that he's also involved in this?
Right.
These people are, again, we said at the beginning that we know that there are real deaths. We know that those children are probably dead and it's awful. Like they do not deserve that. But there's also like actors in a sense, like people who are placed in certain traumatic events and they're in multiple different traumatic events. Like it's super.
They're, what do they call them? Trauma actors or something like that.
Trauma actors.
They're basically going around and playing on people's emotions,
right?
To steer the ship. That's the whole thing with the false flag, is just shifting the blame to somebody else. So that's their job, is to come in and go, oh, it's this, it's this. And when you start to see, that Vegas shooting is the biggest mass shooting in America, right?
Pretty sure, yeah. It was a big deal.
The largest number of lives lost in a mass shooting in 16 minutes or however long this event took place. And he happened to be the incident commander for that. And then he happens to be the mayor or the whatever chief of police in Maui when they have the most devastating wildfire that those islands have ever seen in 60 something years. How many coincidences does there have to be before it's mathematically impossible?
Yeah. And the thing with the deaths, that's a lot of people to be missing, right? That's a lot of people. And my brain always goes to, okay, if this is a pedophile cleanup type of thing, and they knew that they were going to destroy this area based on, like, let's say the good guys, if there are good guys anywhere. Say the good guys are trying to clean up this mess that's going on in Maui. Say they do, and we're just speculating here and just having conversation, but say they do have all of these tunnels under there, and all of these celebrities are running children up under there, and there's all of this going on in between all of the mansions and all of the area, and everybody knows that it's going on. They're taking these natives, and this is like a hub for this terrorist activity, if you ask me. What if they evacuated, the good guys evacuated a bunch of people out of there, and then they destroyed their operation with the technology that they already made, that the bad guys made, this direct energy weapon? Maybe it was the good guys destroying what these guys did over there in Maui, the evil and the destruction and all of those different things.
But what's the incentive to destroy the island, to destroy the town, to destroy the...
Why wouldn't they destroy Oprah's house at least?
Right. And then why do you have all these quadrillionaires that still have their beautiful homes still standing?
That's a great question. It's hard to know what's going on in Hawaii, right? Right now, there's so much information coming from all different directions, and we have to, that's why we wanted to talk about it, because we don't know yet. We're still and that's why we haven't done an episode quickly about this, because we kind of wanted to wait and get more information and find more connections, which I think we found a bunch of connections and a bunch of things that are very weird about it, things for the audience to think about, but we don't know, like, definitively. It's hard when you're looking at things on the TV and you're looking at things on the internet and you're like, okay, how do all these pieces fit together? It's just hard. It's really hard, but we just want to give people hope out there to know that there is hope in the fact that, even if people do lose their lives, we know that there is a lot more after death than they're letting us know, if that makes sense. Like, we believe in Jesus on this podcast. We believe that there is a spiritual realm. We believe that there is a lot more going on outside of this realm that we don't understand. There is a battle in the heavenly realms, and those battling things in the heavenly realms also translate down here, and we don't know what's going on up there between the angels and the demons and all of the fighting and everything. We do read it in the Bible that there is this war going on, but we have limited understanding, we have limited answers, and what the Bible tells us to do is just trust in Jesus, right? He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He says, I am the truth. And so I guess we just want to say, as we're seeking for truth on the internet and we're looking at things like Q and we're going through all of this stuff, we want to make sure that all of our audience knows that we put God first. And when we're going through all of this stuff, it's really easy to get caught up in the darkness and all of these different things and busy work, like just trying to find information. But do you have a relationship with Jesus? Because if this is getting closer to the end of the world, which a lot of people talk about, we're going to want to be on the right side of the end of days. There is a lot of people out there that are waking up to the truth of what's going on in the world, but they're still not understanding that God is in control of all of it. And the fear that comes from these things like Hawaii and all the deaths and all of the mass shootings and all that stuff, that's all fear. It's all fear. And we're not meant, as Christians or as followers of Christ, we're not meant to be falling into those fear traps. And so we have to be very careful, in my opinion. We have to be very careful and say that Jesus is the truth. Jesus is the way. And as we talk about Hawaii, pedophilia, and all those different things, we know how God feels about it. What about that book? Did you guys see that book on Amazon that came out that was about this particular Maui fire situation, but it was published on August 10th. And I think they went back and they like made an adjustment on, and they were like, oh, it was individually published. It wasn't like published by a big publishing company, so it was able to be published faster. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me, because if you're writing a book, there's so much research that goes into that. And the book is stating that it's actually going over, stories from the people that were there, stories from firefighters and all of these different things. But the main thing that we're hearing from this book is that this is why we need to pay attention to climate control. This is why we need to, the earth is warming up and we need to be careful, and we need to blot out the sun, and we need to be careful because we're all going to die. That fear mongering of this climate change stuff, that's a huge story that they're trying to attach to this Hawaii thing. And that's shocking to me, because the book came out on the 10th and the fires happened on the 8th through the 11th. That's just not possible. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Like, when you're trying to put these pieces together and you're trying to figure it out, you see something like that and it's almost like a glitch in the Matrix. You know what I mean? Like, it's the black cat walking by and you're just like, what? That doesn't make sense to normal life.
This is where I go, does not compute.
Does not compute. Yeah. And we find that it's just not possible. And so you start asking why? How did this book come out? Is it just to push this narrative? Did they already know that they were going to do this for the land grab and for the 15-minute cities? And they knew that this was going to happen. And this person wrote a book about it and accidentally, or on purpose, dropped it right in the middle of when the incident was still happening. Like, I don't know. Yeah. You guys can leave comments.
They've been pushing the global warming thing, though, for
forever,
for so many years. It's like, okay, we get it. Like,
yeah,
it's so stupid.
How do they know the temperature of the Earth 10,000 years ago? We don't even have artifacts that date back longer than 1,000 years in America. Like, how do they have this information? They know what the Earth's temperature was.
And for anybody who's a Christian, in my opinion, God made everything perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not going to make an Earth
that's going to overheat. Like, it just doesn't even make sense to me. It's so silly. But part of me thinks that they dropped that book on purpose at the time that they dropped it in the middle of the fires, to kind of say, we still own you guys. We still control you guys.
We can do whatever we want.
Go ahead and question it, but who's really in control? Like, there's like throwing it in our face almost.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a game to them.
Yeah, it is all a game. And we're all pawns, and
you remember the big triangle that we went over in our Who Are They episode with the all-seeing eye on top, and we're all the way down at the bottom. We are literally on the bottom.
Peasant class.
Yeah. That's what they want. They want rulers and peasants. They don't want anything in between, because the people in between might stand up and say, we're not doing this anymore.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, when you go and you get a passport to travel throughout the world, you get a United States passport, it has a designation on there that you are a peasant. Like, it's on the passport. And a lot of people don't know that because they're not asking the right questions. It's like an iRobot when that dude, Will Smith's going around and he's standing up on the hill and he's looking out. He puts that little disc down and the doctor comes up and he's like, that's not the right question. And then finally he's like, that is the right question. That's where we need to get to, is asking all of these questions and trying to figure out, why is this happening? Why now? Why COVID in 2020? It doesn't make sense, because they were in the middle of an election cycle. That's why. They started it so that they could steal the election. It's really not hard to understand when you pay attention and you step back and you don't get fear involved and you just rely on solid fact, evidence-based materials.
And the Bible tells us that God didn't give us a spirit of fear, but of sound mind. So, but it's really hard, especially as a mom and as a woman. I don't know. It's really hard to not be afraid of this kind of stuff because I'm like, okay, we have these wildfires that are going on like this close. Like, that's scary to me because we live in a state that's a giant tinderbox, especially right now when they're telling people you can't water your lawn, you can't. We're on a water ration and we live in the Willamette Valley surrounded by water. Like, how are we on a water ration right now?
Water,
so
and
all my
snow
plants are
melt
dying.
That's what's tragic.
She's still watering. Yeah. Don't let her fool you.
Can't stop a freight train.
I'm only watering the backyard where my neighbors can't report me.
Don't tell the city. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Nancy's
water rationing.
Tell the city.
That was another thing about Hawaii was they were talking about a drought. They were in the middle of a drought, and that's why everything was tinderbox.
I'm like, what makes this state that's full of trees even more flammable? Oh, I know. Let's not maintain the forests. Let's not go in and like clear out the underbrush and clean out, all the stuff that catches the trees on fire. It's not, the trees don't just spontaneously combust. They catch on fire because all of the underbrush that they're not going out and cleaning anymore because they don't want to disturb the animal habitats, that's the stuff that catches on fire. And then it catches those big trees on fire.
And then those habitats on fire, and then it kills the animals too.
Remember the
animals
spotted
don't
owl?
have anywhere to go.
The poor spotted owls when I was growing up. I'm like, they're going to kill all the spotted owls. And now I'm like, wait, let's not kill the humans. I have a better idea.
Yeah. Let's not kill anybody. Let's just chill out. And that's the problem is this, when you begin to understand the agenda, it's right in front of our faces. The reason we're doing these episodes is to just compile information, really. We're trying to compile information and give out as much information as we can so that people can make a decision for themselves. We're not asking anybody to believe anything that we believe. I mean, I don't care if you believe in the flat earth or if Trump is really the president or if biolabs were in Ukraine. Like, none of that really matters. What matters is that you're looking, to me, that you're asking questions, that you're trying to seek knowledge, because there's a difference between just seeking knowledge just to be smart. And there's seeking knowledge so that you can be a part of something bigger than yourself. Right. And that's what this movement, in my opinion, is all about. Being a part of something bigger than ourselves to where we're not putting our heads in the sand anymore. And we're saying, you know what, we are paying attention. We are looking. And that DEW, that direct energy weapon, did you see on the Mountain Dew? The Mountain Dew cans, they have like a Hawaiian theme, the dew. Do the do. It has like a Hawaiian theme. People are putting that on the internet, which is really interesting. It's almost like telegraphing a false flag with that, just like they did on the dollar bill for 9/11, or on was it the 20? I think it's the $20 bill.
5.
It's one of them. It's currency, that's for sure. But you can fold it up, and it basically shows I think it's all of them, actually. If you fold all of them up,
put them all together,
as it goes down, you see the towers falling down and smoke.
Then you see that, then it's rubble, then it's all smoke.
I think that's what it is. It's just telegraphing. They're telegraphing because they have that contract where they have to tell us, they have to get consent. The problem is, and I keep telling people this, the problem is we need to stop giving consent to everything. Like, we just allow these things to happen. We allow these fascist dictators to get in office. We allow our local governments and our local school boards to do whatever they want. But now we're getting to the point in society where people are asking questions. Why are my children reading these pornographic books in school? Like that lady in Virginia. And she was going and she was screaming at the school board because they weren't listening to her. That's what people need to be doing, is saying, this is unacceptable. We will sue you. We will come together like they did with that local hospital group that Bethany used to be a part of. A group of nurses and doctors got together and said, we're going to sue you for this whole COVID situation. And they're going to win. If they haven't already, I haven't heard an update, but they're going to win.
think that they did win one.
Yeah.
I think the rest are still going on, but
because everything they did was illegal. It was illegal. And you can't do that type of stuff in a fascist state, but we as a collective let them do that. We let them lock us in our houses. We let them tell us who could go to work and who can't go to work. We let them tell us, what protocols they were going to put us on in the hospital, even if we didn't want those protocols. They're like, no, this is the COVID protocol. Yeah, but the COVID protocol is killing people, so we don't want that. And it's just standing up
almost killed
for yourself. Yeah, it almost killed Kristen. I don't know if we've ever told that story on the podcast, but it almost killed Kristen. She went into the hospital and they put her on remdesivir. They gave her a bag. They wouldn't let me in the hospital. By the time I got there, she was delirious, didn't even know who she was or where she was. Bethany and I had to fight to get me in there. We talked to everybody that we could in management to get me in there. I finally got into the hospital, which was unheard of. The nurses and doctors were looking at me like it was like, you're not supposed to be here. I was advocating for Kristen, and that's why I was there. I said, well, have you gotten her consent to give her that remdesivir? Because if she doesn't understand what she's saying or doing, she doesn't know where she's at, then she hasn't given you consent. And so therefore I am giving you consent or not giving you consent. And so we did that with the hospital. They stopped giving her remdesivir. They started giving her zinc and vitamin C and vitamin D and this different protocol.
This was after my kidneys shut down, though.
Yeah, her kidneys started shutting down. She was seeing like squirrels in the room and soccer players and all kinds of weird stuff.
There was a meerkat, and it was on my IV pole.
She was hallucinating, man. Her kidneys were shutting down.
Somebody finally said, this lady's a nurse, and when she wakes up, if she knows you did all this stuff to her without her consent, you guys are screwed. Mm-hmm. I think it was Bethany
that was me that said that.
She's like, you don't know who you've got in your bed right now. She's a firecracker.
I had to pull some major do I need to call my attorney card?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did, because
but that's the stuff that you have to do.
I got 2 out of 3 doses of the remdesivir. Mm-hmm. And after the second dose, I've never I've birthed Viking children. I have very big children, and I've never had so much pain as I had after that second dose of the remdesivir. Like, I could feel my organs shutting down.
Yeah.
And I knew something was wrong, and I remember looking at Rick just like, I don't know how to tell you this, but I know that I'm dying. And it had nothing to do with me having COVID. The COVID part was the easy part. Yeah. It was this other stuff that was going on.
Yeah, and as soon as you got off the remdesivir and we got on that different protocol, everything was fine. And
they would only give us a certain amount of vitamins. So Rick had some vitamins that he had snuck in or something, extra vitamin C and extra zinc and all the stuff that, they had done the research before I went in. So he had all that stuff. But was it the next day? I think it was the next day. They told me, well, you can't go home unless you can walk this far with your oxygen level staying. And I'm like, okay, then let me out of bed. And this was the hardest part for me, is if you've ever had a loved one in a hospital, you walk in and there's people everywhere. There's people all over the place. So I'm not kidding. When we walked out of the door in our full COVID garb, he had to wear a mask and a gown 24/7 for 5 days straight. He couldn't even take it off in our own room. So,
or were they offering him any food?
But they wouldn't let him leave to get food and come, or he wouldn't be able to come back. It was literally good thing I didn't have an appetite, because he ate most of my hospital food. It was awful. So we walk outside and start walking around, because I'm like, put the oxygen meter on me. I want to walk around and see what I can do, So we take a lap around, and it's like a freaking ghost town in there. Every door is closed. There is no human being. We didn't see a single human being the entire time we were walking, until one of the doctors came out of this side office area, and he looked at me like I was a ghost. I don't think he thought I was going to be alive after that third dose of remdesivir. He looked at me like, oh, you're out of bed and you're walking? He was totally shocked. And I'm like, yeah, can you sign my discharge papers, please? Because I want out of here.
Yeah, get us out of here. But that's kind of the point of what we are talking about, is you have to pay attention. You can't trust these doctors and these nurses have your best interest. You have, what do they always say? Trust but verify, right? It's a smart thing to do, is to trust that these people are taking care of you and they want you to survive and then blah, 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 but also verify, because what they're doing doesn't seem like that. So their words, their actions, and what the outcome is, like Kristen's stuff was shutting down and they were still like, well, we got to do the protocol. It's like, no, it's time to pivot. It's time to pay attention to the fact that she's going downhill fast and we need to pivot. Something that you've added since I've been here or since she got here is a problem. And it was remdesivir. And I don't care what anybody says. There's documentation on the internet that says that it does shut down your organs. So if, they want to put your family member in a hospital and give them remdesivir and give them the protocol, that's what's killing the people, is the hospital protocol. Because
not
it's
to mention,
not
these people died alone in a hospital bed with nobody around them. Like if they were lucky and they had a good nurse, then the nurse would let you FaceTime your family before you died. But these people died alone, by themselves, in fear, in an isolated unit, which the isolation was a joke. It was literally a tarp that was in the hallway. To get onto the COVID unit, it was a tarp.
Yeah.
Like a clear plastic tarp. I'm like, this is what's keeping COVID out of the rest of the hospital? Really? A joke.
Yeah. Ask questions, look around, open your eyes. Don't be distracted by everything that they're trying to throw at you. Find your own answers.
Yeah.
Be like the Bereans in the Bible, where they don't take the pastor's word for it. They don't take anybody's word for it. They're going to go back to the Bible and they're going to check it for themselves. And they're going to say, you know what? I did hear you, but I'm going to go look it up. And that's okay. If you listen to our podcast and you're like, that sounds plausible, but I'm going to look it up, we're fine with that. We're encouraging that. We want everybody to look, question.
Yeah, we want you to do that.
Yeah.
And keep sending us stuff. I love it when people are sending us stuff all the time now, just verifying, or some of them are like, oh, maybe we missed the mark a little bit there. I don't know, but just send us stuff. That's the whole point, is to be talking about this stuff and to have it not be so taboo.
We're not going to sit here like the news and act like we are the authorities, because we're not. We are the news now. We're the new news, right? All of these truthers, all these people on the internet, all these podcasts that are coming out and talking about all these things, those digital content creators, like all of the people, like, JT loves JC, who we have, or follows JC. We had him on. He's a content creator. All of these people are starting these things up, talking about all kind of the same stuff that we're talking about, because it is important. And we're all getting to the point now where we're sharing information and we're saying, did you see this? Did you see that? Did you see this? Whereas before, we were all just watching The Bachelor and nobody knew what was going on in the world. Nobody knew where Hillary Clinton was during Haiti stuff. Nobody knew that her, election manager, the guy that was running it, the Podesta, has a brother and he's got all kinds of weird art in his house, and that they're pedophiles, and he was at Comet Ping Pong and, doing all of the Pizzagate stuff. It's like nobody knew all that stuff until they started really digging into it. Nobody knew the full depths and widths and breadths of COVID until they started really looking into it. And that's what we have to do. They're not going to tell you that on the news what's true and what's not. It's 6 companies, right? We've talked about this. 6 companies own all of the media that you consume. All of it. Disney, ESPN, CBS, ABC, NBC, Fox News, all of it. If you think Fox News is good, they're not. Rupert Murdoch, not a good dude. They fired Tucker Carlson for saying the truth about January 6th. We talked about that on a podcast. Like, these people in the news are not telling you the truth. And so you have to, like we've done, you have to go on the internet. You have to also watch the news. It's not a problem to watch the news, but watch the news, look at the internet, look at what Fox News is saying, look at what CNN is saying, look what the truthers are saying online. Look what all of the hackers and the autists are finding in the deep dark webs, because all of this stuff matters. And it's all a piece to the puzzle that we can put together.
And if nothing else, use your God-given discernment.
Most importantly,
you can consume as much information on the internet as you want, But at the end of the day, you don't know what's true and what's not true. But what we do know is that Jesus came, he died for our sins. You know, we know the good news, we know the gospel. Those are the truths that we have to cling to in times like this, because we don't know what's real and what's not. And it's very possible that all of this stuff is nothing, and maybe it is just coincidences, and you know, we don't really know.
Or a huge distraction from something else.
Right.
Like what's going on with Trump and our country and the indictments. I mean, how many indictments does Trump have now? Like there's so much stuff going on in the world. Is it a distraction? Are they trying to say, look at Maui, when they're trying to do something else over here?
Or they're like, look, an alien invasion, look, wildfires, look, the former president's getting indicted again. Like, it's all just...
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not a bad idea to narrow your sources down and just, you know, consume as much as you need to, but realize you don't need to be worried about all of this stuff. You know, be worried about your neighbor across the street. Be worried about the people in your local schools, in your local churches. Like,
yeah, I mean, if you want to, like, this is huge, right? How do you take down the government? How do you take down the medical system? How do you take down all of the things that have us in bondage? How do we do that as Americans, right? Well, the American way, in a lot of ways, is to just grab all of our guns and attack, right? That's a really American way of doing things, is we like to just kill everything. Well, maybe not all of the people need to be killed. Maybe they're all brainwashed. You know what I mean? And you get to a place where it's like, okay, the brainwashed people aren't actually the problem. Even though they're spouting off on social media, all those news anchors, all those different things, it's the brainwashing that's the problem. Who's doing the brainwashing? That's what we want to know. And I feel like we've laid that out pretty good on the podcast. Who's doing the brainwashing? Why are they doing it? All that stuff. So we just want to say Hawaii is what it is. Here's some information that we found. Make your own decision on it, but don't worry about it. It's not the end of the world. If you want to give some money, or if you want to fly to Maui and go help, that's great. But what's going on in your own neighborhood? Is there somebody across the street that needs your help? Is there somebody down, that's having, somebody that's got some deep, dark depression going on? Maybe just go knock on their door and visit them, like pay attention. Are there elderly people in your neighborhood that need, that their husband died and they don't have any help? We've seen this hundreds of times. You can make food for them. You can, if you're a man and you know how to work with tools, you can go and help them build something if they need it. Like, there's so many things that we can do in our own communities. And if we're all doing that, then we will change the world. But if we're all just watching The Bachelor and America's Got Talent.
Do they still make The Bachelor?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They make The Bachelor. It's like the worst way to date a human being ever. And that's the way that they do it. They're like, I'm in love with this guy, and then I'm in love with that guy, and then, oh no, I love this guy. It's like, come on, man. This is not how you find love.
Been really emotionally traumatized by The Bachelor.
It's just sick. It's gross.
There a story there?
Maybe.
Did you get kicked off the show?
Maybe I'm jealous because they've never called me to be the
one. The Bachelor and Grey's Anatomy. That's.
That's how they get you.
Now I just watch Naked and Afraid and figure out how I'm going to make a fire with a magnifying glass.
Because you might need it.
I might need to.
All right, you guys. I think that's the episode for this. We've gone a little over an hour, but I feel like we've had a good time explaining some things, talking about some things. Hopefully you guys had a good time. Don't forget, as always, to like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you can find us. Remember, we also have video on Spotify and on YouTube and on Rumble. So if you want to watch the show, you can do it there. You can watch it on your TV. A lot of people know this. If you have a smart TV, you can download Spotify and YouTube, that type of stuff. You can watch us on TV if that's what you want to do. I mean, there's options, right? And nobody knows how you want to consume your content, but those are your options. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. And with that, we're going to get out of here. We are That's So Fringy Podcast. My name is Rick.
I'm Kristen.
And I'm Bethany.
And we are out of here. You guys have a great rest of your week, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.